Perfect. Okay, welcome back. We are starting module two, which covers the four-part validation formula. This is the formula that creates that how did you know response from clients. Think of this as the tactical heart of the recognition method. Module one, we talked about why traditional marketing fails expert coaches. So now we're diving in to learn the precise formula that creates immediate recognition and positions you as the obvious choice to move forward with to create transformation. By the end of this module, you'll have the exact language pattern that makes ideal clients stop scrolling and think, finally, there's somebody who understands my exact situation. It's very, very powerful. Um, the neuroscience behind validation, because deep down, audience, the ideal client in the audience is craving validation, meaning that they're craving finding and recognizing that person who understands them and gets them and knows how to help them solve the biggest problem in their life. And so immediately there's a lot of different responses that happen neurologically. Let me share my screen real quick. Cortisol levels decrease because they feel seen suddenly, and that feeling of isolation is relieved. Their breathing naturally deepens because tension releases, and there's mental clarity, and the cognitive load decreases, meaning that if their anxiety is calmed, their overthinking is calmed, their desperation is calmed, all of these. There's also a connection activation as mirror neurons fire. There becomes immediate rapport, and oxytocin is released, which builds trust. And even if you've never met, this trust is really, really deep. And their attention becomes focused because now they've recognized that this person has some knowledge or some skill that they're very interested in learning more about because they're beginning to understand that it could help them in very profound ways. And then there's also decision making enhancement. The prefrontal cortex engagement increases, which helps with rational decision making. Something that a lot of expert coaches don't understand is that traditional marketing focuses a lot on creating an emotional based decision, and it puts a lot of urgency and a lot of pressure on the person, along with a lot of excitement and a lot of hype, so that they're excited and make a quick decision. The more you charge and the more of an expert you are, the more unique of a problem solver that you are, you would rather have somebody making a logic based decision. And the reason for that is because if they make an emotional based decision, they spend $5,000, they're a lot higher likely to come back and complain, want their money back, be upset, feel manipulated. And that's could be quite true. Emotional based selling can be quite manipulative. I rather want people to know exactly what they're getting into, why they're paying for this, what transformation I help people with, and then they get to spend time and decide, are they ready for that or not? So it's very important. Also, you'll notice the emotional resistance decreases. Um, one of the big problems with based decisions is that there's also emotional resistance. The scared part will come up, the fear. the guilt of spending money and this type of thing, where when it's logical, it becomes more of an investment opportunity instead of a quick impulse buy, because that creates buyer's remorse. But when it's an investment opportunity, people are also much more likely to take it seriously and actually put effort and time into it. Where an emotion, as soon as that excitement wears off, people are much more likely to quit, to ghost, to fall off the face of the planet and never be seen again. So, and they're also much more open to guidance and direction increases. So you can give them specific action steps and they're much more willing to go to it. So I experienced a long time ago this recognition gap, and I believe most coaches face this. So before we dive into the formula, let's talk about what most expert coaches do wrong and why they're not seeing results. So one of the common approaches in content is to say, I help successful entrepreneurs, da 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 da, and just very blatantly kind of say, I help this person do this. And the issue with this is that it's too broad. I finished um, talking about generalities and watering the message down, and that's exactly what this does from what I was speaking about in Module 1. The recognition method approach says things like, I help six-figure business owners who feel like frauds despite their success. Da 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 da. So immediate people go like, that's me. That's exactly speaking to me. I feel like a fraud even despite my success. And you are speaking specifically to one person. So the difference between those two messages is specificity. And that's where the connection is created or the invisibility is created if it's not specific enough. So generality creates invisibility. You're just another drop in the pond, but specific language creates focus and interest. So the four-part validation formula, the first part is the specific moment. And the reason we want this is because it creates recognition through precise description of an experience that the ideal audience member has has had. The framework describes an exact external situation, meaning it's not what's going on inside them, it's what they're experiencing outside of themselves. And it has to be very specific so that when they hear it or they read it, they go like, how did they know? They almost feel, you want them to feel like you've been watching them. So a poor example of this is saying something like, when you're struggling to get clients, we've all struggled to get clients. It's very watered down and very general. Um, the recognition method would say something like, you know, the moment when you check your calendar for next week and you see no client calls scheduled, even though you've been posting valuable content daily for 6 months. That speaks directly to a specific person. So the psychology behind this is talking about specificity, because we're talking about checking the calendar, 6 months of timeline of effort. It talks about behavior details that trigger recognition, like posting daily. And there's a contrast that creates emotional impact. All of that effort versus no results. We check the calendar, and again, there's no calls scheduled. It sucks. So that's what creates that recognition. So that's part one, the specific moment. where we catch their attention and speak specifically to an experience that they've had. Part two is their internal dialogue, where we articulate the exact thoughts that they believe are unique to them. This is the internal aspect that they're dealing with, where the moment, the specific experience was the external behaviors and this, and even though I've been doing this, I'm not getting this. Very specific, talking about the external. This is now changing to where it's internal, reading their mind about what they're saying. So a poor example of this might be saying you might feel frustrated, where my method says that voice in your head whispers, maybe I'm just not cut out for this business thing, even though I know deep down how much value I can add to the right clients. So it's again the specificity. It's very specific, exactly what they're saying to themselves and how they're feeling, even though they know they can do something. So this is not only talking about internal dialogue, and this is where a lot of relief comes in because they go like, holy cow, this person can almost read my mind. They not only understand what I've experienced, but they're understanding how I'm talking to myself, that dark part that has fear or guilt or shame or embarrassment or anxiety, all of these things. And so um, it also talks about despite knowing, which helps acknowledge their competence. Like, even though you know you can really help a lot of people in profound ways with your expertise. Um, so it's got that validating aspect to it, even though they're struggling. And then speaks again very specifically with their self-doubt language, is what I call it, that they're using internally to kind of complain. It's almost like this why me? Like, man, maybe I just am not cut out for this online business stuff. Just like, good grief. So that's part two. Part three is the contrast point. And this helps interrupt their limiting belief pattern and also adds a new perspective. So it's kind of like this is their limiting belief. We interrupt it real quickly, and then we create a what I call a reframe that allows for something new to happen. Remember, we have to give them a new way of experiencing a solution that is possible. So if they're saying like this online business thing's not for me, they're not feeling like it's possible, even though they know they can help somebody. So we challenge the assumptions about what their struggle means. We have to understand what that struggle means to them and their assumption about all of that. And then we reframe our offer in a way that creates relief for them. So, a really poor example that I'm seeing a lot of lately is it's not your fault because somebody said if you can convince people it's not their fault, then everybody started saying it's not your fault. It's not your fault, which is great. But if my limiting belief is really strong, I'm not going to believe you telling me it's not my fault. It has to be much more powerful. So, the recognition method, the language pattern we use is what if this evidence that you're failing isn't actual evidence that you're failing, but actually predictable phase that signals you're ready for a completely different approach to client attraction. it gets people thinking like, okay, what if? And that's empowering because a lot of our internal dialogue is disempowering and limiting, and it reinforces our limiting beliefs, and then that cuts our capabilities. So when you say, what if? This is just a signal that you need a different approach to be recognized for your actual value and uniqueness of what you can do for people, and that it's just a little different approach. Maybe even it'll take less effort because the approach will be so effective. That gives people hope. And it's empowering because it gives them an idea like maybe it's not me, it's just the method that I'm using. I know I can help people because I've done it already with people, but I'm just not getting results. So maybe my method needs switched up. So, what if helps create openness? The reframe creates an excited, allowing for hope type of feeling. And then of course we introduce hope without false promises. We're not saying you're going to have a million high ticket clients in the next month or anything crazy. No false promises, just saying there's a better way and you can get relief. And then part 4 of the validation process is the normalization of their experience as part of a larger pattern, letting them know that the experience they're having isn't an isolated event, that most people actually experience it and find a way out of it is very, very powerful. It allows for it, instead of being a unique hole that they're down in, they realize that most people who have tried what they're doing have been in that same hole. So it provides context that normalizes their struggle, but it also positions our own expertise, your expertise, as being a solution out of that hole. So, a poor example of this is many coaches experience this. Again, that's like so general and very watered down and not powerful. So if you're saying stuff in your content, like when you're struggling to get clients, but nothing's happening, you might feel frustrated. And it's not your fault. Most coaches experience this. It's like, oh, stab me because I don't want to hear any more of this. So the recognition method example is this exact phase that you're experiencing affects 82% of transformation experts before they discover the psychology based positioning that eliminates the need for constant content creation. So there's a lot of, again, it's very specific. You're using specific percentages or information instead of many coaches, you're saying 82%. uh, you're using professional language that builds authority instead of many coaches. You're saying 82% of transformation experts. And you're offering a solution preview that creates some anticipation that before they discovered this, they had the same experience. But once they discovered, and it's your method, the recognition method approach, that eliminates the need for constant content creation, exhaustive posting, constant sales conversations where you're trying to convince people to buy your high ticket program. It eliminates all of that and creates even more results than you could imagine. That's powerful, right? So to implement your validation formula, we start with identifying your ideal client's specific moment. So the exercise is thinking of the situation, what problem do you solve? What's the biggest problem that you solve? If you think about your last three client conversations that you had, what specific external situations were they describing? What did they have going on that was a big problem for them? Some of the common ones that I have for coaches is like empty calendar despite their constant effort, engagement without conversation, competing on price rather than value, feeling like they're shouting into the void, watching less qualified coaches succeed, or having imposter syndrome even though they have results. So the specific moment framework that you want to have is this. You know that moment when, and then you say there's a specific external situation, despite, or you can say something like even though, or something similar like that. You've put all this effort that they've made, and you speak specifically to their effort, specifically to their external situation. I'm going to read one of these examples. These are the three main niches, health, wealth, and relationships. So here's one of these examples. You can see this framework above it. You know that moment when you refresh your email hoping for a client inquiry, despite having posted three valuable pieces of content this week. And nothing, crickets, ghosts. That's a specific situation. So that's what you want to come up with for the problem that you solve and how your ideal client experiences that problem and what they're trying to do to alleviate it or why that problem's happening even though they're doing this specific effort. That's the framework that you're going to follow. Step two is to capture their exact internal dialogue. So you want to think about what specific thoughts run through their mind during that struggle moment. So internal dialogue patterns are like self-doubt despite evidence, comparison with others, questioning their calling, fear of being found out as a fraud or an imposter, confusion about next steps, not knowing what to do. So the framework is whatever their specific self-doubt thought is, despite acknowledgement of their competence and effort. So one example for coaches struggling with visibility, that voice that whispers, here's their specific internal dialogue. Maybe I'm just not meant to be visible, despite knowing your transformation work changes lives. That's a powerful statement. So that's what you want your statement to sound like, their internal dialogue. Step three is the contrast point where you start to flip their belief, where you start to hack their limiting belief in two and give them another out and relief and build hope that there's a better way, the reframe. So, common limiting beliefs that people might have is I'm not good at marketing and marketing approaches aren't aligned with your expertise. That's the reframe. So it's not that you're not good at marketing, it's that the marketing approach you're using isn't aligned with your expertise. It's meant for a beginner mindset, but your expertise speaks to somebody who's past that, and you have to speak directly to that person in a clear way, and then everything will change. So the contrast point framework is what if whatever their struggle is isn't evidence of whatever their limiting belief is, but actually, and then you list the empowering reframe. So, with that framework in view, the marketing struggle would be what if your content isn't getting engagement because you're too sophisticated for generic marketing approaches. That's the limiting belief. Um, I'm sorry. This is changing this framework around just a little bit. You're too sophisticated for generic marketing approaches is the reframe, and then it finishes with the limiting belief, not because you're bad at marketing. So the limiting belief is, I think I'm bad at marketing. So you can see how you could change these frameworks around and use them in different sequences. So you could list, I prefer this way, ending with the empowering reframe rather than ending with the limiting belief. So if I were doing that, I would say, what if your content isn't getting engagement because you're bad at marketing, but it's because you're too sophisticated for generic marketing approaches. So end on the good, I would prefer. And then step four, which is the last step of the validation sequence, is your normalization statement, the pattern recognition. So this is what positions your experience and your authority while providing relief. The elements of normalization are maybe specific statistics or percentages, professional terminology for their identity. That's very important. Referencing your methodology or approach and giving a preview of the solution, but without giving it away. So the normalization framework looks something like the percentage of whatever their identity is, experience whatever their struggle is before discovering whatever your approach is. So you've seen this one already. 87% of transformation experts face this exact challenge before implementing the psychology based positioning that eliminates content overwhelm. Or 3 out of 4 strategic consultants. So that's your percentage or your number. That's your identity that you're speaking to. They all experience this struggle before they discover your solution that helps them through and gives them relief. So it helps them know they're not alone. It helps them know you're speaking directly to them. It helps them know, again, reinforcing that you have a great idea exactly what they're struggling with. And then here's your solution that you've helped others with the same problem overcome. So it's very powerful. Can you see the power in this? So your complete 4-part validation formula follows this template. This is all 4 templates. It's going to be 4 lines. That's all your formula is. 4 parts, 4 lines. The specific moment, the internal dialogue, the contrast point, and the normalization. So it's your turn now to complete this exercise. Go through all these questions, fill in your ideal client's specific moment, their biggest struggle, the exact internal dialogue. Remember, you have to be specific. The exact internal dialogue that they're saying inside their head, the contrast point that gives them a reframe, and then the normalization statement. Refer to this and just go through, make a list of all the internal dialogue they could use the most powerful one, list the specific moments they could possibly have, take the most powerful one, list the possible contrast points that you could have, take the most powerful one, list the limiting beliefs they could have. If you can discover the most powerful one, use it. And then create powerful reframes and use the most powerful one. And then do some research, know your industry. What percentage of people deal with this? Research it a little bit. What's the likelihood that somebody has experienced this? Is it high? Is it low? Um, Understand what their identity is. If it's not a professional identity, understand the personal identity that is struggling with this. Um, List the struggle in ways that bring it alive. Don't overgeneralize it, but be specific about it. Like the knot in your stomach because you're not getting your calendar is empty again, even though you posted valuable content, more valuable than you've ever posted. Bring it alive and be specific with it. And then list your approach. So use this formula to create a powerful validation statement. Then, as we wrap it up, we're going to test and refine this formula. So when it's working, you're going to see immediate indicators like people saying things like, "How did you know?" or "This is exactly me. I've experienced this exact thing." You're going to notice increased engagement almost immediately. Like the first post that you put out in this formula, you're going to notice increased engagement. You're going to notice direct messages that reference specific parts of what you're talking about in your content. And your content will get shared more than it has been being. You're also going to have conversation indicators where prospects mention your content specifically as they reach out. You're going to have less need for small talk to warm up conversations, but you're going to get right to people who arrive ready to talk about solutions that you're offering. You're also going to notice reduced objections because they already feel understood. They're going to have less questions. They're going to have less fear because they're going to be more convinced that you are in a position that can help them in incredible ways. So just a short conversation that reinforces that understanding in them is going to create a sale. There's going to be a natural progression from recognition to interest to working together. And then there's going to be business indicators too of successful validation formula use. Higher quality leads who are already pre-qualified, shorter sales cycles, meaning like it takes less time to create a sale because they already trust you. They're just needing to get a little bit of reinforcement that they're correct in that trust, and then boom, it's a sale. Also, you'll be able to raise your prices because what you are offering, the value of what you're offering is much more clear and people see it. So they go, well, yeah. Like we all understand Tony Robbins is going to charge a lot more money than somebody offering a little bit of NLP who's just brand new. Like, of course, we all get who Tony Robbins is. And you'll also get referrals who use specific language about understanding things about your method or how you get it and things like that. If you find your formula isn't creating strong recognition, here are refinement questions to help analyze and adjust it to make it even more powerful. Is my specific moment detailed enough? Remember, it should be so specific, they almost wonder if you've been watching them. Am I voicing their actual internal dialogue? You have to use their exact words, not professional language, but how they speak to themselves. Hint, hint, hint. How do you speak to yourself? Use some of that internal dialogue because that's powerful. And if you're vulnerable enough to use that kind of dialogue, it will strike in other people's hearts. They will go like, wow, this person really gets me because they are reading my mind. They know exactly what I'm saying to myself. Another thing is, does my contrast point create relief? It should feel like a weight off of their shoulders when they hear it or read it. And is my normalization building authority? It should position you as the expert who understands their pattern. And so those are ways, questions you can analyze your validation sequence with and adjust it and make it even more powerful. You can always make it more and more powerful. And as you build skill, you want to adjust it to make it relevant for stronger, bigger, more bold problems and have a stronger, more bold relief, stronger, more bold solution, normalization, and everything like that. So it becomes very powerful. Advanced applications of this to think about is once you have your powerful four-part validation formula, you can create multiple variations of it where you create different situations, but the same internal dialogue, the same situation with different internal dialogues. Then you're not having to create a lot of different pieces of content. You're just mixing and matching the same content, the same situation, or the same internal dialogue over and over, but it speaks to the same audience member. That's really key. You can also do platform adaptations where longer form content on Facebook and LinkedIn, shorter form for Instagram or Twitter or Threads. You can do video content or email content, and it can be very powerful. The same exact validation formula in all of those pieces can be extremely powerful. So here we go. Your recognition revolution begins. The implementation challenge is take the next 48 hours. Your mission is to create one piece of content using your complete four-part validation formula and post it on your primary platform. Put it out there. Pay attention to the speed of initial engagement, the quality of the comments and responses, the direct message volume and quality, and how the conversations you're engaged in feel different from the usual. Document the difference, and you'll see the power of this type of messaging. And then post another one, post one of these a day, and see how it affects the mood and attitude of your audience. It will draw people to you. And this is just module 2. This is only the first pillar of the 4 pillars. Coming up in module 3, we'll dive deep into creating your transformation fingerprint, which is the unique identity shift that you facilitate that positions you as irreplaceable. It makes you the obvious choice. You'll discover how to identify the specific from to transformation that only you can create, and why identity level positioning eliminates all competition. The language patterns that make your approach feel inevitable, like it's the only way to go. Like, I'm ready for this. This is what I've been waiting for, what I've been looking for. And how to weave your transformation fingerprint into everything you do. It's very, very powerful. So let's do a quick 4-part validation formula commitment, understanding that it only works if you implement it. Most coaches will read this and think that makes sense, but then continue using their generic language because it feels safer. So I'm inviting you to step out of your comfort zone and understand that recognition requires courage. You have to put yourself out there. And the more specific you speak, the more you're putting yourself out there, the more vulnerability it takes, the more courage it takes. So speak directly to your ideal clients, specific experience instead of trying to appeal to everyone. I guarantee you, you're not leaving money on the table by excluding people that you can't help. You want to only be speaking to the people you can help who are struggling so deeply that when they hear your validation message, that they see you as the person to work with. You're going to be bringing money to the table because you're going to be able to help the people who are struggling the most. So, are you ready to be known for understanding exactly what your ideal clients are going through? This is what creates people to go from invisible to magnetic authority. Remember, magnets only pick up specific things, they don't pick up everything. You don't want that because then you still have to sift. You don't want to be talking to everybody, only the specific people that you can help the most. And that's incredibly powerful. So, your implementation exercises, create your formula, go through the template, and then test the content, put it out there. And then if you have time and energy and you're willing to do it and you want the best results, create a validation bank where you've got 5 different variations of your formula addressing different situations with different internal dialogues. So you can mix and match from bank A of different situations to bank B of different dialogues. And then be sure to track the recognition as well and see just how it's improved between engagement, quality of conversations, what's being said, shares, DMs, and different things like that. And then next time in module 3, we will address the transformation fingerprint. Will be incredibly powerful. I appreciate you, and I will see y'all.